Chapter 20. The novel Spooky. Under the influence of alcohol and meth, Skinner feverishly wrote his novel. He named it Spooky, and he received a large advance from his publisher. He sold the movie rights to a major studio. It didn't make him rich, but the money allowed him to indulge his extracurricular habits. To protect the investigation, Skinner had to fabricate a different supernatural storyline. His research into tribes in the area led him to the Cowlitz and Yakama tribes. Through his research, he found that the greatest evil spirit was named Tapilo. He made up the myth. Tapilo had risen from the core of the earth to punish Yakama women who married the white man and gave birth to half-breeds. Ironically, in this case, it was the white half that tainted the purity of the bloodline. As in the real case, the reproductive organs were removed. The women's bodies were not dumped in front of a family planning clinic. They were spread-eagled on an X-cross at the foot of Patu, a sacred mountain that he invented from the Yakama word for snow peak. Spooky was still the name that had been given by the police. However, he became the warrior Luslasbayap, which was simply the Yakama word for warrior. The warrior had risen from the dead to do the bidding of Tapilo, the evil spirit. At the bidding of Tapilo, Luslasbayap had scarred his face as Spooky had done, but he had done it as a ceremony needed to become the servant of Tapilo. In Skinner's version, Detective Wright was possessed by a shaman ancestor and was then able to solve the case. Wright was half Yakama and a genius. His mother had been one of the victims. In reality, the Spooky case was never solved. All the officers on the task force received some mention and were treated kindly. Well, all except Detective Lindy Martin, whose name had been only slightly changed to Detective Linda Martinez. She became a bumbling banshee whose incompetence ruined the case. At the end of his novel, the shaman-possessed Wright saved the Yakama woman who was carrying his child. The ghostly Luslasbayap was sent back to the grave by the shaman part of Wright and the local Yakama shaman, Kia, aka Howling Wolf. What Skinner didn't realize was that it wasn't by accident, or an odd twist of fate, that he had chosen Tapilo as the centerpiece of his supernatural tale. Chapter 21. The Origin Story. In the time before humans, Tapilo and his servant, Paase, were the great spirits, guardians and stewards of the world. At the beginning, Tapilo was content and humble, but as the world became more beautiful and filled with wonder, Tapilo began to take great pride in his guardianship. He began to believe that he, not the Great Spirit, was responsible for the miraculous world. He grew arrogant and ungrateful. It came one day that the Great Spirit told Tapilo that it was time to put humans in the world and make them the guardians. Tapilo objected, but the Great Spirit said, "There is a time and place for all things. This is no longer your time, and this is not your place. There will be other times and other places for you." Tapilo became angry. "It is I who have watched over this world. You have done nothing. Were you not happy with what I had given you to watch over?" Tapilo did not answer. "Did you not love the world?" Tapilo sulked like a child. "Do you not think that you should let my other creations live in this wondrous world?" "It is my world," Tapilo yelled. "I did not create this world for you, for you are a spirit who lives in the spirit world. You can only watch this world, you cannot walk in it and take of its bounty. Everything that I create has its place, and I have created the world for humans. It is time for them to walk among its beauty. It is time for them to be stewards. That has always been my plan. You did not tell me this before. You did not need to know. You only had to do what you were asked. What I created you for." Hearing that, Tapilo became even angrier. He shouted, "I am the guardian, not you. I have nourished it and watched it grow, not you. This world is mine, and I will not leave it. I will not let it be given to these tiny, weak creatures." The Great Spirit looked sternly at him and said, "Tapilo, there is an unpleasant darkness in you, but your desire to remain will be granted." Topilo thought that he had defeated the Great Spirit, and he swelled with pride and turned his back to him. The Great Spirit looked at Topilo as he walked away and knew that he could never let him be free if the humans were to be put into the world. With a single thought, the Great Spirit turned Topilo into a giant black bird of prey and made his bones of molten lava so that Topilo's bones would forever burn inside him. Thus, he would never be able to fly and never be able to leave the molten lava, for if his bones ever cooled, they would harden, and he would be frozen for all time. Then the Great Spirit thrust Topilo into the river of molten lava that flows under the world. Topilo had been granted his wish. He would never leave the world. When Topilo realized what the Great Spirit had done to him, he wailed and thrashed, and in his fit of anger, he lashed out at his servant, Paase. So great was his anger that he buried Paase in a grave in the mountains so that Paase would not be left to serve anyone else. As Topilo sunk into the molten lava, he vowed to get revenge. However, he knew that the Great Spirit was too strong. So, he vowed to take his revenge on the world. He vowed to visit his greatest revenge on the new guardians of the earth, the humans. Topilo thought that as long as he continued to create the mountain's fiery destruction, the humans would never be guardians. And so, Topilo ravaged the lands with great explosions and burning rivers of lava. The Great Spirit was patient, for he knew that Topilo would grow weak and the number of explosions would grow small. Of course, the Great Spirit was right. The frequency of the eruptions diminished, the burning rivers crawled under the earth, and the scorched earth bloomed and flourished. The time had come to give the world to his new guardians. While Topilo was far weaker than he had been, he could still from time to time push his burning rivers to the surface and inflict some revenge on the humans. He reveled in those times, but they came seldom and were not destructive enough to satisfy his need for vengeance. He could hurt the humans, but they always recovered. He realized that to get the great revenge that he wanted, he no longer had the power that he needed. His vengeance remained unquenched. From Topilo's underworld, he had to watch the humans living contentedly in a bountiful world, but in time he saw many humans abuse the world. As they appreciated the world less and less, Topilo sensed the darkness grow in them. They began to use the world and did not replenish it. They began to fight each other for the world's bounty. They destroyed more than they built. They took more than they gave. In time, the darkness in them grew so great that they began to seek revenge on each other and to kill each other. When they did, the darkness grew even more. One day, an angry Topilo shook the mountain Laulatla and forced molten lava into it. As he rose into the mountain with the lava, he felt a small surge of power enter him. He stilled and waited. He felt another, and then another. He thought, "There must be a new power, another force in the humans' world." After much thought, Topilo realized that the power came from the darkness in the humans. On that day, as he shook the mountain, he witnessed the darkness in a warrior grow so great that he murdered his friend. As the warrior was brutally killing his friend, Topilo felt a great surge of power. He wondered if this darkness might be a source of power that he could use. He raised his servant, Paase, from his mountain grave. Topilo infused Paase with his dark will and commanded him to seek out these dark-hearted people. Then, using the power of Topilo's will, Paase would command these people to bring victims before Topilo and slaughter them. Each time they did, Topilo would feel a rush of power. The more terrible the act was and the closer to him it was committed, the more power he felt. Soon he realized that this was the way to gain the power he needed so that he could visit his greatest revenge on humans. He would use the darkness of people's hearts to seek the revenge that he had vowed would be his. Topilo's darkness reigned in the hearts of the people, and for many generations, the tribes were ruthless, vicious, and savage. In the time of the greatest darkness, bands of warriors roamed the land slaughtering men, women, and children. Immortal, powerful, evil spirits inhabited the ruthless warriors. When the evil warriors were caught and killed, Their evil spirits searched for another dark-hearted warrior. The tribes named the evil spirits Seedco, and the warriors possessed by them Seedco warriors. The Great Spirit wept at the sight of the massacres. It was in that time that the Great Spirit sent the first great shaman to the people to show them how to contain the evil spirit in the warrior after he died. He said that they should not kill the Seedco warriors. Instead, to keep the evil spirit in the warrior, they were to cover each warrior in clay, coat the clay with tree sap from the sacred trees along the shore of Spirit Lake, and then quickly fire-harden the clay while the Seedco warrior was alive. Over many generations during the time of the ancient tribes, hundreds of warriors who had been possessed by the vicious Seedco spirits had been taken to the deepest part of Spirit Lake where they sank to the bottom. In time, the land was rid of the Seedco spirits, and they have remained in the entombed warriors in Spirit Lake. When Paise witnessed the Seedco warriors being imprisoned in Spirit Lake, he told Tapilo. Tapilo envisioned the entombed Seedco warriors as an army, which would do his bidding and rid the earth of humans. Using his power, he spoke to the Seedco warriors in Spirit Lake, but his power was not great enough to release them from their clay prisons. He needed more power, and he knew that his strength grew as the darkness and hate in people grew. So, he sent Paise to seek out the dark-hearted people who would bring their victims before Tapilo and viciously murder them. Each time they did, Tapilo's power grew. Again, Tapilo spoke to the Seedco warriors. This time they began to stir and Spirit Lake shuddered. The Great Spirit felt the trembling of the clay caskets in Spirit Lake, and he knew that Tapilo was trying to release them. He knew that they would kill the humans, but he had become saddened by the violence, greed, and disregard for the beautiful world he had made. He wondered if the humans were fit guardians for the land, but he also saw that some humans were good guardians. He decided that he would help them. Again, he called on the great shaman to see if the humans were worthy enough to be saved. If the shaman could find a warrior free of the darkness where hate lives, a warrior willing to sacrifice his life, the Great Spirit would send Koluz, a supernatural spirit, to prepare the warrior to fight Tapilo and drive him back into the river of fire in the underworld. If the warrior succeeded, the bounty of the world would return. If the warrior failed, the shaman would continue the search, and the slaughter of the people would continue and Tapilo's power would grow. If Tapilo gained enough power from the darkness in the humans to free the Seedco warriors, the Great Spirit would let the Seedco warriors destroy the world. The great shaman began his search and Tapilo's power grew with every evil act. Several times he thought that he had found a warrior free of a dark heart, but each time, the warrior failed Koluz's test. Not for several generations did the shaman find a warrior pure enough to defeat Tapilo. On a night when the moon was full and the forest was brightly lit, the shaman saw a warrior sitting at a grave near Spirit Lake. His head was down. The moonlight had put a halo around him as he mourned. The shaman approached the warrior and asked for whom he mourned. The warrior replied, "My wife and my daughter." The shaman asked how they had died. He replied, "They were killed by my best friend." Then the warrior told him that when he was on a hunting trip, his friend raped and killed the warrior's wife. When his daughter woke and saw him, he killed her. Then he set fire to the warrior's lodge. When the warrior returned, he grieved for his family, and each night he came to their grave to comfort them. The shaman asked what happened to his friend. The warrior said that he was caught, and the elders of the tribe sentenced him to be entombed in Spirit Lake. The shaman said, "You must hate your friend." The warrior replied, "I do not hate him. I comfort my wife and daughter. There is no room in my heart for hate." The shaman said, "But he betrayed you and took the ones that you loved." The warrior said, "Yes, he betrayed me. When they caught him, he became very angry. He said that he hated me because he wanted my wife, so he took her." The shaman asked, "Did you not hate him then?" The warrior replied, "When I looked into his eyes I saw the blackest of black. His hate was torturing him. He could see no good in the world. So, he could see none of nature's beauty. His hate had blinded him, and he was wandering alone in darkness. I want to remember my wife and daughter in the full light of sun and the crystal light of the moon. The shaman wondered if this was the good, brave man he had searched for. He looked deep into the heart of the warrior. He sensed no hate. He saw no darkness. The shaman and Kolus tested the warrior. They sent terrifying dreams. They inflicted pain. They showed him the frightening world of the supernatural. They tested his resolve. They tried to entice the darkness to reveal itself. There was none. They tried to induce hate. None appeared. When the warrior passed all of the tests, he was ready to fight Paase and Tapilo. To help the warrior defeat Paase and Tapilo, Kolus, enduring great pain, constructed a weapon from his talons. With the weapon, the warrior journeyed to Tapilo's lair. Paase was waiting for him outside the lair. The warrior defeated Paase quickly. Then he went into Tapilo's lair. The warrior fought bravely. The talons and beak of Tapilo slashed and tore into him. But he fought on. For hours he struggled against the mighty bird, but Tapilo was too strong. With blood pouring from his open wounds, the warrior finally fell to his knees. The black bird roared. The echoes shook the cave. He looked down at the defeated warrior. The warrior's life was fading with each beat of his heart. Tapilo rose up over the warrior to give a fierce strike that would end the warrior's life. With the warrior's remaining strength, he tightened his grip on Kola's weapon. Tapilo's beak opened wide, and he lunged at the warrior. The warrior raised his weapon, crouched, and sprung at Tapilo's chest. The weapon dug deep into the spirit bird's chest. Tapilo howled. The warrior pulled down hard on the weapon, tearing him open. Tapilo thrashed and wailed. The warrior looked into the burning river, and in his final act dragged Tapilo into the flames and the warrior to his death. Tapilo had been defeated. The trembling of the caskets in Spirit Lake stopped. The Sitka warriors remained at the bottom of Spirit Lake. With the help of the Great Spirit, the world began to repair itself. In time, peace returned to the land. But from time to time, when the darkness grows in the people's hearts and souls, and hate finds a home in the darkness, the savagery returns and unbound hate grows. The deep, dense, stark darkness in the humans nourishes Tapilo, and little by little he grows strong again. Then he rises into Laulatla. The mountain grows weak, and using the power of the darkness and hate in people's hearts, Tapilo opens Laulatla with great force. Tapilo returns to his lair. He raises Paase and tries to free the Sitka warriors, make them his army, and take back the world that he feels is rightfully his. And the search for a new, good warrior begins again. Part 2. The Mark of Kolus. 6 years have passed. Chapter 22. The Rise and Fall of Skinner. 2 years after Skinner submitted Spooky, it came out in print. It reached the top 5 before sales declined. 2 years later, he had published a top 10. For those 4 years, the novel supported Skinner's decadent lifestyle while he tried to write another bestseller. His agent, Teresa Taylor, doted on him, and the dinners and the midnight drinks led to the inevitable pleasure between the sheets. Within a month, they were waking up regularly in each other's embrace. The success bought more parties and with them drugs and indulgences. The meth that had made him a sexual stallion and a prolific writer drained him of both. The computer became less kind, the ideas triter, and his struggle greater. The harder writing became, the more he turned to drugs, the more he turned to drugs, the harder writing became. As the cycle deepened, the less he believed that the drugs were the problem and the more he believed his agent, Teresa Taylor, was the problem. Once a friend and sometime lover, she was now the person who had been telling him that his work was not good enough. And truth be told, either was his lovemaking. It had been 2 years since Teresa Taylor had found one of his novels acceptable. She had abandoned his bed after the first year when his erratic behavior became too frightening. Once again, he was waiting on her decision on his most recent manuscript. Teresa Taylor, a petite, pleasant-looking brunette with an hourglass figure, opened the door to her office and Skinner sauntered into the room. She invited him to sit on the couch across from her desk. He smiled and sat. Holding the manuscript, she sat about 3 feet away from him, put the manuscript between them, and angled her body toward him. She asked how he was doing. He fidgeted impatiently but managed to provide a friendly, "Fine. That's good to hear. I know that it still needs some work, but with the exception of a few parts and some clean-up work, I think it's good to go, right?" For a few seconds, she remained silent. "I don't think this one can be saved." Initially, he was stunned. However, anger followed shortly. As she proceeded to pick apart the trite plot, the inconsistencies, and finally, the basic premise of the story, his frown deepened, and his jaw and fists tightened. When she proclaimed that the book was beyond redemption, he had reached his limits. He started with, "What the hell do you know? You haven't had shit published," he said as he rose aggressively from the couch. And then it got worse and personal. He argued with her so stridently, and used such profound and frequent profanity that her last comment before she showed him the door was, "You have a fireplace, right? Use this as kindling." She picked up the manuscript and tossed it to him. Surprised, he failed to catch it. He looked down at it, kicked it across the room, and fed her as hateful a gaze as he could muster in his now daily haze. Then, as she suggested, he found the door, hurried through it, and closed it hard enough to rattle the glass in the door and rearrange the pictures in the hall. He swore, threatened, and growled all the way to the elevator. Skinner's alcohol-fueled anger shook his hand. The barrel of his pistol wavered as he raised it. He pulled his other hand up to steady it. The gun's sight still vibrated. His sight blurred. He was a mere 6 feet away from her. He remembered to squeeze and not yank the trigger. The gun's blast was louder than he had remembered, the pressure on his eardrum was greater than he expected, and the recoil nearly hit the side of his head. A hole the size of a dime opened on his agent's forehead. The woman's expression didn't change, she was still smiling. Directly behind her, the wall exploded, spraying hundreds of dark mahogany splinters. He admired the bullet hole in his agent's picture. "Take that, bitch. There's a million like you out there. There's only one L.A. Skinner. I know what you're trying to do to me. You want to ruin me. You'll regret this. All of you will regret this. I'm not done. I'll be back on top, and you'll wish that you had treated me differently." He staggered back to the couch, sat on the edge, leaned over the coffee table, and picked up the 1/4-inch, clear, chunky crystal. He dropped it in the bowl of his pipe, grabbed his Bic lighter, fired it up, heated the bowl, and inhaled heavily. It burned his throat, but it didn't matter. His throat and nostrils had been tender for the past 6 months. He was using several times a day now. Some evenings it was the only thing he did, and the only thing he cared about. This was his 4th bowl today, and it was only 2 p.m. He kept telling himself that he was searching for inspiration from God. He leaned his head back and let the euphoric haze take him away from his failure, and replant the notion that he was still the same author that 6 years ago had written Spooky. The bitch has done this to me. She had driven him to this latest binge. He lifted his head as her look of disgust flashed back into his mind. He gazed down at the gun, smiled, picked it up, walked over to the wall, and fired 3 more shots into her face. The picture drifted to the floor and settled upside down. But his hate for her was not that easy to get out of his mind. Skinner found it impossible to find a new agent and publisher. While agents knew of his writing prowess, they also knew of his addiction, his unpredictable behavior, and the decline in his craft. As it had been put to him several times as he searched for a new agent, they had all the clients that they could handle. Since the meth and now a new addiction, gambling, were eating up his bank account, he needed to do something, and soon. He had one option left: come up with a unique concept for a novel, get straight, go back to Teresa Taylor, and apologize to her. His new idea? A sequel. Bring back Topilo, an evil spirit, Patu, the sacred mountain, and of course Spooky, aka Lustless Biop, the warrior. The genesis of the new idea came after reading a news article on a UK website. The February 2013 article reported on the findings of a neuropsychologist. He claimed to have discovered an area in the frontal lobe of the brains of killers and rapists. He said that scans of the brain showed a dark mass, not a tumor, and while he could not conclude that a person with the dark mass would always become a violent criminal, he also concluded that a far greater percentage of them would. Whereas, he could find no one who committed a violent crime when the dark mass was absent. From that dark mass concept, Skinner grew a new plot. The essence of Skinner's plot again involved the Yakama warrior Lustless Biop, and the evil spirit Topilo, and the sacred mountain, Patu. This time, however, Topilo would have the unique ability to link to that dark mass which lay dormant in the descendants of the ancient evil Yakama warriors. Wakiza, the son of the shaman Kiya, is visited by ancient Yakama ancestors. He is told to destroy the casino at the foot of the sacred mountain, Patu. He sets the casino on fire. The attempt is unsuccessful. He summons the warrior Lustless Biop from the grave. Unwittingly, Wakiza also awakens Topilo, the evil spirit. When Wakiza refuses Topilo's commands to kill the elders of the tribe, Lustless Biop enters the body of Wakiza. The descendants of the evil warriors are brought to the sacred mountain. Through the dark mass in the frontal lobe of the warriors, Topilo commands the descendants, and the warriors begin to kill the elders of the tribe. Kiya catches Wakiza performing dangerous rituals. Kiya exorcises Lustless Biop from Wakiza, but in the process, his son dies. He then performs a ritual to bring Wakiza back to life. Lustless Biop is sent back to the grave, and Kiya's son is saved, but Topilo roars and shakes the ground in anger. The earth opens up, swallows Topilo, and then closes. The descendants are released from Topilo's spell. The son and the father reunite. While there were significant holes in the story, Skinner, in his current meth-encased cloud, could not see them. The night before the Friday afternoon meeting, Skinner vowed to himself that he would be straight for the appointment that he had made with Teresa. This was a last-ditch effort to save his livelihood and his all-consuming meth addiction. 5 hours after he made the vow, he broke it. So, he made another vow, which lasted a total of 6 hours. Under the influence of meth, he was twitchy and paranoid. However, without it he was depressed, in agony and unable to even carry on a moderately rational conversation. He found himself firmly planted between a rock and a hard place. He settled for Twitchy. The literary agency of Taylor, Winslow, and Watley was housed in the old revitalized section of Seattle. The formerly abandoned brick buildings were now one of the most beautiful areas in the city, and it was thriving. Wrought iron ornate street lamps, brick sidewalks, and cobblestone intersections had given the area a warm appearance that it had not seen for 100 years. The agency, Taylor, Winslow, and Watley, was on the 3rd floor of a corner building. In keeping with the turn of the 20th century atmosphere, the office was furnished with antiques. It had warmth to it that only rich-wood antiques can provide. 6 agents were part of the firm. Watley had been 6 feet underground for 3 years. The chime on Teresa Taylor's phone coincided with a calendar reminder that popped up in the top right corner of her computer screen. She didn't expect Skinner to be early. That he had never managed to do in years. But in his precarious situation, she thought he might at least be on time. She rolled her eyes, killed the pop-up, and continued reading. At 5 minutes past the appointment time she mumbled, "Some people never change." She had written him off when the 10-minute mark came and went. It was one less headache from a man who had already given her many. The sense of relief that she felt was short-lived. She knew that he would arrive later, as much as an hour, and he would expect that his tardiness would be forgiven. At 12 minutes after the appointment time he was shown into her office. He did something out of character. He sincerely apologized and gave a believable reason. Traffic had snarled at an intersection, and he had to find an alternate route. He appeared to be wired, but in her desire to see a changed man, she decided to accept his reason and blame his wired appearance on the anxiety of trying to get through the traffic and arrive on time. The meeting started very cordially. He thanked her for seeing him. She was glad to see him and hoped he was feeling better. He said he was and began to talk about the new novel. A few minutes into his rambling, her view of what she feared came to fruition. She saw a wide-eyed, nervous, fidgety, fallow, gaunt man standing at the edge of an abyss. Her compassion had told her that she wanted him to have come up with something worthy of his talents. The agent in her told her that he was hopelessly doomed and not worth the time and the risk. She managed to get through 10 minutes of his disjointed rendition of the trials and tribulations of researching and writing the first draft. Skinner handed her the query. She read it and smiled. Then he handed her the synopsis. She read it, smiled even broader, and said, "This is really interesting. I think you've got something here." He handed her the manuscript, and she said, "I'll read over it in the next few days and give you a call. Couldn't you just read the first 2 chapters now? I'd rather take my time with them." His jaw tightened. "I understand, but it would be really helpful if I would know now so that I could begin working on the second draft immediately." "Mr. Skinner." His eyes squinted and hardened. "That's LA, or have you forgotten?" "I'm sorry, LA. I have other appointments today, and it wouldn't be fair to them to have them wait or come back another time. It just wouldn't be right. You didn't treat me like this before. You said that I could see you any time. Now I have one book that doesn't sell and you kick me to the curb. I've made you a lot of money." He stood, moved to her desk, put his fisted knuckles on it, leaned forward, and bellowed, "You owe me. Calm down, LA. All you have to do is wait a few days. We'll set up a time right now." "It's only a short time to wait," she pleaded. "No. You'll read at least the first chapter now, and I'm not leaving until you do," he fiercely insisted as his head jetted forward. Teresa pulled her head back, surprised and a little frightened. Then she got angry. "Get out. This is why I can't work with you anymore. You're meth crazed. Just look at yourself. You're high right now. You'll regret this. That's a promise. You'll see what happens to people who cross me. Get out or I'll call the police." She picked up the phone. Skinner stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Teresa picked up the manuscript, ceremoniously held it over the trash can, and let it clunk to the bottom. At once angry and relieved, she told herself that she was done with him, forever. Skinner walked the block to his car. He was livid. He desperately wanted to punch something, to tear something into tiny pieces and set it ablaze. After he closed the door to his car, he slammed the heels of his hands on the steering wheel. "The bitch will regret this. Fire up the oven at the crematorium, boys, a customer is coming."